In today's episode, we are diving into project planning, from those big, dreamy goals of renovating an entire home to the smaller but equally rewarding projects like a furniture flip. I'm sharing my practical tips and tricks to kick procrastination to the curb and crush the overwhelm of a big project, and helping Zoe, Cierra, and Allisa get started with their own home design dilemmas. So grab your favorite beverage, cozy up, and let's turn those project dreams into reality one step at a time. Hello, guys. Welcome back to the With My Own Two Hands podcast. I'm your host. Kinsley's here as well, my 7-pound multi-poo, and she is rambunctious, but hopefully she will fall asleep very soon. I hope you guys are doing so amazing. Oh my gosh, she really is. Kinsley, relax. This is supposed to be a calming episode. We're going to talk about projects. Of course, you do help with all the projects. When I am recording this, I am 10 days from my baby boy's due date. He is getting quite heavy. I am ready. I'm very ready. I am ready, but we also have our kitchen that we're renovating, which you guys have heard if you've heard any of the podcast episodes thus far in season 2. And if you've watched any of my videos over on YouTube, you know that we are very much still renovating our kitchen, and it's incredibly custom, and we had a very short amount of time to do it in. But overarchingly, I want the kitchen to be done well, not rushed, because the baby's on the way. So we already had known going into it, there's a huge possibility that the baby could come early and we won't finish, or the baby will come right on time and we won't finish. The variables were fine for me. We were always going to figure it out, because at the end of the day, I want a good kitchen and I want it to be done right. So we're good with it. We're still trucking along. We're in the final stretch. So it's really, really good. So for today's episode, it's actually an idea that came from one of you guys. I have a submission form that you can submit topic ideas, your design dilemmas. I always leave it in the show notes. So feel free to check it out after the episode if you want to submit something. So Kayla actually wrote in and she said, I would love to hear how you plan your projects from initial idea to timeline to execution. As big or as small of a project like the cottage as a whole. We renovated a 110-year-old cottage. And I say we lightly. It was basically me during the pandemic renovating a cottage with my bare hands. Versus renovating a smaller project like a curio cabinet. Sometimes I get so overwhelmed with the planning of it all that I never take the first step. Watching you go into projects with confidence and a plan is incredibly inspiring. Well, thank you. That actually makes me really happy, because I'm a huge planner and I definitely have done my fair share of projects in my life and had to plan for them and figure them out and just where to start and how to begin. I've had failure to launch syndrome, I like to call it, for a lot of things. And I think I've mastered it. I think I've gotten really good at the planning of it all and tackling projects. And it is what I love to do. So over time, it's come pretty natural. I've been sharing my projects online now for over 6 years. I started my YouTube channel in 2018, and I've been sharing my projects, little, big, small, medium, everything in between. And the majority of the projects that I have shared, I have done for the first time myself. So I'm going into it, like every project and every video that I share and create, I'm going into it blind in a sense. I'm going into it learning and researching and trying to figure out how to execute it all and then make it make sense to everybody else. It's can be quite a lot, and it doesn't always go to as planned. Most of the time, I always have to pivot. There's, a lot goes into it. It really is like planning a project and planning for anything really is a developed skill. I don't think that we come out and we're like, like this baby that I'm carrying around with me does not know probably how to make a plan. Or maybe if he is my child, maybe he already does. Who knows? But it is a skill that's refined and developed over time, right? With practice, with new things that you try and you research, and it really comes down to like a formula that I've kind of created for myself to really tackle anything, which I'm going to be sharing today, which has helped me so much. And it really goes back to my corporate life and gosh, honestly, probably even before then, not with just my full career before I was ever on YouTube, not just before that, maybe college and also high school. I think over time I've just really fine-tune my planning skills and my planning abilities, and just like perfected them, and to where I can apply the same strategies and I can apply the same kind of planning mindset to about anything that I set my mind to. All throughout my 20s, I worked in the fashion industry in some capacity, wearing lots of different hats. It started off in college and I studied fashion design. I went to a very specialized school. I went to FITM in downtown Los Angeles, and it was all project based and all planning project based. So every class you were really developing an entire project every class, every quarter. Of course, you had like your curriculum to follow and teachers to guide you through it kind of thing. But what started there, and then I moved into the fashion industry, working, interning, everything from denim companies to jewelry companies to lifestyle, like apparel, to yoga, to like a snap button zipper, like fastener type place. Like started working as like an assistant designer, where we would do obviously lines and collections, and we would have to plan out, how things were going to come to market and where we were going to make them and how they were going to all come together and what we needed for every garment that we made, every piece of clothing. Like the shirt I'm wearing needs the thread and the fabric itself, but also the pattern and the buttons and the labels on the inside and all of that and all the different colors that we're going to do it in. And so the design part of the industry, I did everything from design to pattern making, to sourcing materials. And then I moved on from there to like marketing, where I did everything from graphic design to managing photo shoots to planning out new collections to opening retail stores. Oh, there was a whole retail sector, because I have a background in retail, because my mom opened a boutique when I was young, and I really got to see the business side of things. And needless to say, I've worked in lots of different areas and done lots of different things that have all contributed to me really being forced to be a good planner and work things out. And whether I'm just working on a project with myself or I'm delegating to a team, over the years, I really got to the point where I could be given a problem or a project, not a problem, but a project to work on within a matter of minutes to a day, depending on how complex it is. I could break down a project and make a project plan, an execution plan for either myself or a team of people to delegate to, and we would hit the ground running and make it happen. And it became second nature to me. It became something that my brain could just dissect a project. It could just look at it and be like, okay, we're going to start here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to go through all the materials that we need. We're going to go through all of this. Everything that I learned throughout my past careers and past jobs could easily be applied to all the projects that I do now. Even from small DIY projects, like she mentioned, small curio cabinet makeovers that I wanted to do, or like a flip on a piece of furniture, to an entire home renovation, an entire house that I had to plan and execute. Now, that didn't come without its challenges. I had never renovated an entire house myself before, so it was a lot more detailed, a lot more in-depth, a lot more question marks in my head about how am I supposed to plan for something when I've never done it before, and I think that that's where we struggle with a plan. It's like kind of easy to make a plan on something you've already done. It's like, oh, we're going to go, let's say like on a summer vacation or something, and we're going to go to a place we've already been. You can almost apply that same, that you already done it. So it's easy to do it the second time. But when you're entering these like new designs, you're going to be redoing a room in your house and you want to do totally new techniques. It's almost like, I don't even know where to start because I've never done this before. I don't know what materials I'm going to need. I don't know what pieces are going to go well together, and it's this just huge question mark, and it makes you have this like failure to launch syndrome that I've had so often throughout my projects. And it's harder to get started, and then you feel defeated, then you don't know what to do, and you stop and you don't even get started. And then it's that room that you've never touched and you've never gotten done because you just don't know where to start. I think a lot of our fear of like getting started comes from the lack of confidence in knowing what we're doing. Right. So it's we're not confident in our ability to understand how to maybe let's say you want to add beadboard to a wall, but you've never done it before, and you've seen maybe me do it, and you've seen maybe other tutorials that have done it, but you're like, well, I haven't physically done it, so I don't know. And so you don't have the confidence in that one skill. You procrastinate. And when I procrastinate, it is because it's a lack of confidence in what I'm doing. It's the unknown of it all. And I know that about myself. Anytime I'm procrastinating, it really is because I'm putting off something that I'm not quite sure about. I'm not confident in. I haven't done it before. I can't just jump into it. I need my brain to process it. I come up with all these excuses, but at the end of the day, it's procrastinating because I have no confidence in it yet. Not forever, just yet. I need time to process it. So we have to overcome that confidence problem and why we're procrastinating a project, because we just don't know what we're doing yet. And really how we overcome that is with knowledge or research. So for me, Google has always been my best friend. I've always Googled pretty much everything about a project before I get started, watched all the videos, done all the things, so that I have more confidence, so that I can get started and I can actually start the project. Let's take, for example, like if I've never put up wallpaper before, I need to Google it. Okay, like how do you put a wallpaper? Like how do you do it? Well, you need, like now that I've done it, I know how. You roll it inside out so the sticky side is on the outside, and you dip it into water for a certain amount of seconds, and then you pull it out and it activates the glue on the backside. But then there are different types of wallpaper. It gets more complicated than that, but really it comes down to having the knowledge so that you can have the confidence so you can get started. Like the first step, if you feel like you're entering a project and you're already starting to be like, well, I'm from the South, we call it crawfishing. Like, like crawfish start to back up. Like, like, oh, you're crawfishing. Like you're backing out, you're like slowly backing out of the room that you wanted to work on, and you're just going to close the door and deal with it later. If you're starting to crawfish like that, then you're just missing that component. So you just need to start from square one again, and you need to go back to it and be like, okay, what do I want to do in that room? And what can I research? What can I just sit on the couch and just like Google? And then you'll slowly gain the confidence to go back and open that door again and start the project, and you'll have more power and you'll have more confidence. There is a huge downside to being a planner and being a person that likes plans and likes order and likes things to go exactly to plan, is that plans never go, or rarely go, exactly as planned. And it took me so long to get over the fact, or just accept that fact, really, that not everything is going to go as I planned it. When I was younger, it used to aggravate me. If something didn't go as planned, it would kind of throw me off course. It would mess with me too much. I'm like, no, that's not the plan. This is how it's supposed to go, and this is what was supposed to happen. And it would actually like derail me. And it took me a long time to understand that a plan needs to somewhat be loose. It needs to be an overarching kind of goal that you're going to follow, or a plan that you're going to follow, but you need to allow room to pivot, and you need to allow yourself to kind of go with the flow. And for planners, going with the flow doesn't really jive. Like a planner doesn't really go with the flow. It's like a uncomfortableness that I had to get used to when I would start with a project. I would encounter maybe an issue with my original plan because I'd never done it before. So I would encounter one issue and I would get really frustrated and I would stop. But then I had to train myself to be like, okay, well, that didn't work. I need a new plan. And once I realized that I could just develop a new plan within a plan, within a plan, within a plan, it helped my planner brain really continue forward with a project instead of just getting so defeated. A project that I did that was the biggest to go with the flow, besides the cottage renovation as a whole, because that had a lot of go with the flows, like that was just like one thing after another. It was a huge project. But speaking of like just a small project, is actually the room that I'm sitting in right now. I have these archways that I transformed our original openings that I didn't love the shape of because they had like cut corners. And I wanted them to be more like of these, what I called soft arches. And I wanted to make the openings feel larger. So I knew my goal. I just needed to figure out a plan for how to do that. Give the illusion that the opening was a lot larger than it actually was. But I had never done an archway before. I didn't know how to bend wood. I didn't know how to quite give that illusion. So I needed to experiment with different trims and things. So when I got started, I had a plan. And it didn't go well. I broke wood. It popped on me. It wouldn't shape right. I needed to use a specific kind of material in order to get it to do right. Like I really, really had to just go with the flow. I had to keep going back to the hardware store to try a new material or try a new solution. So if you're going to make a plan, just know that you're going to have to pivot it and you need to have plans within plans. So not only when you're starting a project, you have this failure to launch because of the confidence factor and you need to do research. But the second part of that is really sometimes we look at a project and it's too big. It's too much for our brains to comprehend. It's too daunting. It's just too much. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming that also stops you from starting. Like there's so much I want to do in this room or so much that needs to be done or so much of this particular project that I just like can't even wrap my head around what to do first because there's too much to it. What I like to do is break it down and start with something that is easier to digest. Something that is easier for me to wrap my head around, kind of like the low-hanging fruit of the project. It's like, what do I already know how to do on this project and where could I start? Because sometimes just the starting of it kind of gets your juices flowing and kind of gets you into the project and you're starting to get your hands dirty. And then things start to fall into place. So for the cottage, for instance, I walked up to a house. I had made this big decision to buy this project. Like that was a project house for me. It was going to really hone my skills. I was so excited. It was like a rush of, buying obviously like our first property and it needed so much work and I knew it, but I was excited about the challenge. I was excited about all the things that I was going to learn and just experience and have something really positive to put my energy into during the pandemic because there was nothing really else to do. And I was excited about having something to share and just overwhelmed with all of that, which was all the good, overwhelming feelings. But then when it got to the day where I was like, okay, I own this thing. I own this property. I own this house. I own this 1,600 square feet of house that is in desperate need of some tender loving care. What do I do now? Like, where do I start? What do I do? And I've never had that much failure to launch before. I've never had that much procrastination or worry or fear or lack of plan. Truly. I started with what I knew best. I started with the design. I was like, okay, well, what do I want it to become? That was naturally the first place to start. And I think that's the first place to start for every project. You have to start with what do you want it to become? Whether it's a small cabinet that you're flipping, whether it's a room you're decorating or a whole house you're renovating. What's the goal? Where do you want it to end up? And it can still be loose, but that starts with inspiration. That starts with some, your ideas and what you want it to become. So I started with a plan of how I wanted the layout to be, the floor plan itself, how I could redo it while keeping the integrity of the house and saving all of the materials, like salvaging everything that I possibly could. Those were all goals of mine. But still, standing in the driveway that day, I had no idea what I was doing and I had no idea where to start. And I knew from watching HGTV that demo would be something that I would need to do. Demo would be nice, So I started with something I hated. I was like, what? Let me just start with the worst possible thing in this house because I don't have a plan, but let's just start somewhere. And there was this add-on room that they had added onto the cottage that was a rundown, falling down, roof caving in hot tub room on the cottage. And it was disgusting. I am not a hot tub lover, and I don't like a room around it for sure, especially when the roof is falling into it. So everything about that space had to be gone. I had to demo it off. I had to get it out of the way. So I started with something I hated. And maybe that's where you could start with your project. If there's something bad about the project that you're going to do, what's the one thing that's the worst thing for you? What made you want to redo that room? Pick that and do that one. Right? So if you walk in the room and the floors are horrible, they're old vinyl, they're warping, they're coming up and peeling up and it's bad, start there. Just do the floors. Just make a plan to do the floors. That helped me. I did have another okay, well, what do I do now that the hot tub room is done? Got into this situation where I got really used to having people around to help me with the house and demo and things like that, because I also was scared. I was scared to hurt myself, if no one was around and I was using tools and crowbars and I was up on the roof and I do crazy stuff. So I was a little bit scared to do anything without anyone there. Either it was Romeo or my dad or my mom. And some of that fear came from people saying oh, don't hurt yourself, and I get it. I'm not this big buff guy out here in this cottage, doing manual labor work. I had never done any of this before, so I had to proceed with caution. That also could be a reason that you could have this failure to launch. Maybe a project that you want to work on involves you using power tools and you haven't really done that before to the level that you need to accomplish the project. So maybe you feel like you need, your friend that has more experience with power tools, or your husband or your boyfriend or whoever in your life. Maybe you're kind of placing that, oh, well, I need them to help me. And it's stopping the project because I've done that before too. So there was one day I was standing at the cottage and it was probably about 2 months into this whole process. And I got so frustrated with myself. I got so frustrated with the project as a whole because I just continuously didn't know what to do. I would go down there 9 or 10 in the morning every day after breakfast. And I would be like, okay, I'm going to tackle something today. And I got so fed up with the fear of the unknown and fed up with the idea that I might hurt myself. I just started going ham. There was this one video, if you go back, I'll leave it linked, but it was one video where I demoed the kitchen and the laundry room myself. I took down all the cabinets. I took out the countertops, the Formica countertops. I just hauled those things out of there. One day I just picked up a crowbar and I was like, I'm not waiting around anymore. I am not going to let this fear kind of overcome my ability to do this. And I went for it. Now, I'm a very cautious, careful person in general. I'm very purposeful with my movements and actions. I went through that entire cottage renovation never hurting myself. I got one scraped part in my leg. I tripped over a cinder block that was in the street, not the street, but in the yard. We had moved it off to the side because I was moving too fast because other people were helping me. And so it was the urgency of somebody else there. Other than that, and me having allergic reaction to Kills, the paint, the primer, I'm very allergic to it. I think I got overexposed to it, but that's really not hurting myself. That's just having an allergic reaction to something. I'm like, okay, I need to stay away from that. I went through an entire house renovation without ever hurting myself. Like, did I get splinters? Yes. Did I, like have some scrapes or like around just from like literally doing manual labor every day? Yes. But did I chop off a finger or, like, did I really hurt myself to where it would have stopped me from working on the project? No. Think that if you can lead into every project, doing your research, believing in yourself, like taking it slow and easy, and especially if you're going to be using power tools and just knowing like, okay, let me use the gear, let me use the safety protection, let me make sure that I'm doing this well. I think you've got this, and I think you're going to be able to overcome that failure to launch, that lack of confidence, which turns into procrastination. And then you're actually going to be able to accomplish your plan and actually start your project. So with our kitchen renovation, it really started again with the foundational elements of like, what do I want this to become? Now, this was actually something that I just project managed. I am not physically doing our kitchen renovation myself, which I would be totally doing if I wasn't 9 months pregnant. I'm still project managing. Like, I'm still going through the process and having all the things on site and designing the whole thing and making sure it's all right, and working with my contractor and all of that stuff, which takes a lot of planning and a lot of scheduling and being attentive to the project. So this one was a little different, but it did start with the design, what I wanted. That's usually where it starts all the time. So I'm a very visual planner. With every project that I do, I need to actually get it out of my brain and on paper, or out of my brain and in my computer in some way. I need to see it to really understand what I need to do in order to make the plan for the project I need to work on. So if it's like a kitchen renovation, I have it written in my journal. I have a physical book that I love to write on. I also love to use like Milanote to kind of like plan out my projects, dissect everything, really lay it out, and have like a free form. It's like a giant mood board on my computer. I love to use that app. So if you're visual like me, if you like to write things down physically, just get yourself a really good notebook. I love Moleskine notebooks. Love them. They're my favorite. But if you like to do things digitally and you want them on your computer, use Milanote. Those are like my two go-tos. And I'll start with the big project, right? So like the title of it all, the project is the kitchen renovation, right? So like at the top of my page or in Milanote, I'll write kitchen renovation. And then I'll dissect it into smaller projects, right? Because every project is going to have sub-projects that go into them. So with the kitchen renovation, I would write it at the top, and then I would have this whole next column. You can kind of think of it as like not a line graph. I don't even remember what those graphs are called. I don't know words for anything. I'm sure I know I knew at one time. Like a tiered kind of graph. I will draw it on the screen if you're watching on the YouTube channel. I will draw this out, what I'm saying. But kitchen renovation at the top, and then the next line would all next to each other. All these little sub projects would be like appliances. Right? I've got to order appliances. I need to pick which ones I want. I need to know how to install them, to know what kind of plugs we need in the kitchen. All of that. Appliances would be one. Then the next one would be cabinetry design. Like, what do I want for it? I need to pick the wood. What kind of style do I want? What do I want for the, door profiles? Like the actual doors that you open. What do I want? How do I want my feet to look? Because I want them to look more like furniture. What's the design? That's another project. The next one would be hood design. What do I want? It all comes down to what do you want? The hood design. It's like, what size does it need to be? How big is the hood insert? What design shape am I going to have? How do I want it to look? What color is it going to be? All of that. And the next one would be like lighting. I got to pick all the lighting. I need a light over the dining room table. I need a light, all the recessed lights. Which ones am I going to use? What color temperature is the bulb going to be? I need a light over the sink. I need to find that. I probably want these pretty lights to shine down on some of the cabinets. Oh, I want under cabinet lighting. I got to pick all of that. So I've got 4 smaller projects now within my big project. And now it's starting to be more bite-sized. It's starting to be less daunting because I'm not thinking about the kitchen as a whole anymore. I'm thinking about this one element of the kitchen and then making all of the smaller decisions about that one element so that I can get somewhere. After I get all of that written down, I can see it and I feel better about it. I feel like I know what's happening now. I would always approach it as like, okay, what do I need to tackle first? You know, sometimes projects have like domino effects, right? So you need to tackle one thing in order to tackle the next, Some things have more time constraints than others. So I knew going into the kitchen renovation that I really needed to tackle the appliances first because I had to have time to get them delivered. And I needed to know what size they were so that they could actually build the cabinets around them. You know, so that was, some are more priority than others. So then my next phase would go into it and really prioritize my smaller projects. What do I need to do first? What do I need to do last? What can wait? What's not important? Like the decor was less important, you know, than the structural elements of the kitchen. So if you're anything like me and you're more of a visual person, it is going to help you immensely to write it all down. Just get it out on paper. Write it on Post-it so you can move it around, you know, like, or if you're using Milanote, you can just like move your boards around and you can move things so that it's really free form. You might just be thinking about the project too much as a whole and not as its little bitty parts that you can actually tackle. And when in doubt, tackle the easiest thing first because it'll just get you started. So I have this idea, and let me know in the comments if this would be helpful. Would you guys be interested in me like developing like some kind of download for you guys? Like that it could be like a DIY project planner. I'm just like brainstorming right now, but you know, like, would that be helpful? Would you like actually find that valuable where you could just be like, oh my gosh, okay, it's already like planned out for me with like holes and boxes and what to do next and what to do first. You could just like plug in the specifics of your project and you'd have a plan. I feel like it would be fun for me to create like something like that, and then you could just like follow it. So let me know in the comments if that would be something like you would be super interested in. So I went back to your submissions and I looked for any of you guys that had sent in I don't know where to start kind of submission. You're like, I have this space, I have this project, I don't know where to start. And I did find a few of you guys sent in ones like that. So let's get into your design dilemmas. Zoe sent in, I live in a rented accommodation and my bathroom is horrible. I feel like it's a hospital bathroom. Everything is on one side of the bathroom. So the toilet, sink, and bathtub are all on one side. It makes the bathroom feel almost like a galley bathroom, if that makes sense. So basically all the stuff is lined up on one side and then the other side is a wall. I'm assuming wall, maybe a window, maybe not. It feels cold and small and horrible and not a place to relax. The lighting is horrible and can't be changed. Ugh. And it gets some sunlight, just not a lot. It really needs to be repainted and having some life breathed into it, but I don't know where to start. So she didn't actually send in any pictures, so I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I can only imagine. Renting can be difficult, especially like landlords are going to be all across this board of things. Some landlords are going to be like mine that I've rented from the past where you can do a lot to your space. Some are going to be like, you can't even put a nail into the wall. Renting is so hard, which is why I've been really particular about what place I've rented. You know, like I got really particular, but sometimes you don't have that option, like, right? So you're like going into it, like you have a set budget for rent that you want to pay and that's it. And this is what you can get and it's a place to live. And especially if you want to, you know, maybe lower your expenses so that you can save for the next thing or the next, maybe to buy a house or whatever it may be. So sometimes you're left with just what you've got. And when you can't make a lot of changes It's hard. It's hard for even me to be like, well, if it's horrible, but you can't do anything, there's not much to do. But I feel like there are some things. For Zoe, she can't move any of her stuff, her bathroom stuff. Her sink, her toilet, and her bathtub have to be all on one side, and she's got a blank wall. Can't really do anything about it feeling like a galley like that with all of it on one side. So if it feels cold, there are some things that you can do to make it feel warmer, right? You mentioned that it needs to be repainted. I don't know if that's something that you can do. Paint is the number one way that you can transform any space. It's not going to cost you a lot, for a gallon of paint. Highly recommend warming it up with some paint color. You don't want to go too dark if you are having a lack of light in there already. But since you can't change the light, you can add light. So think about ways that you can actually inject more light into the space. I'd hate to bring like a lamp into a bathroom that's like on the smaller side, but like think about ways you can bring more light in. And maybe that's like light that you can like put underneath the cabinets or something that is like underneath. Maybe you can add like a strip lighting behind the mirror if you have it. You say that you need like life kind of injected back into it. Think about what you have for like your shower curtain. Like you can bring in decor elements. That's where you're really going to add the life if you can't change anything else. If you can't put anything like on the walls, if you can hang something, I'd definitely hang some art. Things like that. You have to think about things that aren't going to damage the property, that you're allowed to do, and then add those little touches. Even it's like upstairs in the guest bathroom. We haven't renovated that, and it's like a pure white room. It gets a lot of sunlight though, which is good. But I put like a little small table outside the bathtub with a candle and some bath salts, and it warmed up the space. It added an element of character and detail to it. Like think about the things that you can add in. I hope that helps. Without seeing the space and knowing your style, it's hard. But I know that renting can be such a challenge, but maybe there's something you can do there. Next up is Cierra. My husband and I are in the process of becoming foster parents, first of all, which is incredible. When I read this, I was like, oh, you guys are amazing. We are turning our guest room into a kids' room. It needs to be gender neutral for children between 4 and 6. We live in apartments, so we cannot paint the walls or change the light fixture. Okay. We can hang things on the walls, though. The room is really bare right now, and I think it's too empty for me to know where to start. So again, she's like, just like, it's overwhelming. It's just a space. Where do I start? I know I want some kind of comfy reading corner, storage, and obviously a bed. I really love a similar vintage style to your style of dark, warm wood tones, but I want it to also be light and bright and welcoming. Everything that is currently in the room, I am open to removing or keeping. The light wood thing on the left is my toy box from childhood, which I would like to keep, but it is not currently my style. Okay, so we're renting. We're not changing the paint color. We're not changing the light. We're not changing the floor. None of it. I think the toy box is cute. I think it's a cute shape. If you wanted to do like a DIY on it and then maybe make the wood tone darker, you could probably strip that sealer similar to the stain in the sealer on the toy box. What if you did the technique that I did on the curio cabinet? That technique with the oven cleaner. I'll leave the video link so you can reference it, but the oven cleaner stripped off the sealer and the stain, and it made it look more like bleached oak. That could be a cool thing that you could do to your toy box and have it like be a different one. And then you could strip it and you can stain it into a dark wood if that's more of your my likes for wood stain have gone either nothing. I want bare, I want bleached oak, or I want dark wood. So whichever you prefer, but you can kind of restain the toy box, which would be really cool. Here's her inspiration for the space, which is adorable. It's adorable. Oh my gosh, it's going to be such a fun room for you to work on. I don't know if you're keeping just the twin bed so you have enough space for the other little elements that you'd like, but definitely a rug. Start with a rug. cover up, portions of the floor for sure. And definitely curtains. If you can hang stuff, I would definitely put curtains up around that window. It would make that window feel larger if you hung them outside of the window. So I would extend it as much as you can so that the curtains feel and make the room feel larger and taller. So go up higher and out from the window to make it overall bigger. I think it's just a matter of like streamlining the pieces that you want. I love your inspiration. And you have some lighter wood elements in there, so the bleached kind of look will look really cute. Bringing in like some bookshelves and that doing your little reading nook. But I feel like the room has great potential. And so if you're struggling for where to start, you've already got your inspiration pictures that has a combination of like the light wood and the dark wood and lots of like moody, colorful patterns in like the elements and the decor that you're bringing in. And you can obviously hang stuff. Definitely a rug. Definitely figure out which corner you'd like to put the little reading nook in and have like the little bookshelf in where the bed makes most sense if you're going to leave it that size or maybe make it a little bigger. Add some curtains and then just continue to add in the little small decor pieces. And I think it's really going to come to life. The little rainbow and umbrella little things, you can even make some like that and then have them help you design what goes on them. Maybe you can have them paint what goes on them so it makes them feel like it's their room. I hope that gave you a good place to start, but really you've got the pieces. You already know that your inspiration is so cute. Like you already know what you want. You just kind of have to like dive into it now. And then Alyssa sent in a space that I actually got really excited about. I did a sketch. I got carried away with yours. Anyways, she said, I'm stumped what to do with my dining room. There's a portion in the back of my small 780 square foot home that I'd love to use as a dining area and additional storage, but I'm not sure exactly what to do with it. It has some old wood paneling that I actually love on the walls, but the floors need to be changed. They're a mix of old vinyl. The floor is actually warped a bit, so I'm not sure what I need to do before using like a peel and stick tile. The room is only about 12 foot by 8 foot, which is actually a decent size. 12 by 8 is a decent little add-on. It's only me and my husband in the house, so we would only need a dining table that seats 4. I love the idea of possibly putting a bit of a breakfast nook in the back left corner with a storage bench attached to the wall and some type of coffee bar on the right side, but don't know where to start. My style is similar to yours with a lot of deep, rich colors in the rest of my home. What should I do? Okay, so first of all, like I said, 12 by 8 is decent. Like that's a really decent size. It doesn't have like a walking path to another part of the house, which is great because you're not going to have to allow, like it's not a passageway. So that 12 by 8 can be completely utilized for your dining room and your storage, like a coffee bar kind of thing. I love the wood too. That's actually how they build the old homes, here in the States. It's shiplap. So maybe at one point it had something extra on it. Like if you look on one of the pictures that you sent, there's like a extra drywall and maybe something else that they've put on top of the shiplap. We had all of this in the cottage. That was the way that they used to insulate homes, was just by trapped air. So it's original shiplap. I actually love it. So it just needs to be like perfected. Kind of like there's an area off to the left where you can see that they removed an old cabinet. It just needs to be like touched up and perfected and sanded maybe and just made look good. The floors, I agree with you. Right now she has like this like a vinyl squared off pattern with a diamond in the middle. It's like blue and white, but you can see where they removed an old cabinet. There's another different flooring that's there. And then there's a whole space where there's probably wood flooring underneath all of that. That you get into a little bit of a hairy kind of situation where if you disturb that flooring and it might be toxic in some way, it might have asbestos or something like that. You can have it tested if you want to completely take it up and just be careful, or cover it up and don't disturb it kind of thing. You go one way or another. If you don't want to disturb the floor and you want to just leave it, but it's warping, you have to level it out with something. You could pour something on it, concrete, I don't know, or go to the trouble of like peeling it all up and stuff and just testing it. So that would be up to you, just to make sure it, like is level so that you could actually put something on top. And something else that I noticed about your space, which is a similar problem that we had in the cottage, or a similar thing that they did, they had the window trim was very thick and it was just flat, just like yours. It was just like a flat piece of wood. It was an add-on room, so the ceiling sloped, just like yours, which cut some of the trim on the corner. So it's kind of like chopped off. And it bothered me a lot. I don't know if that particular detail bothers you, but if you just make the trim smaller, like take off that flat trim, update the trim around those two windows by using a smaller trim, you could probably do, from the picture, you could probably do a 2.5 inch trim around the window and not have to chop the corner when the slope of the roof comes down. And I got a little excited about what the space could potentially become. Now, I know you said you only needed to seat 4, but since you have a center window on the back wall and you walk straight in from the center of the adjoining room, I'm all about balance and symmetry in a lot of ways. So what I would do is, here's my little sketch. This is a very balanced thing, and it would also offer you a ton more seating than just 4. It would probably seat now 8. It would probably be double. But essentially, you would have a centralized breakfast nook that you could build out around the perimeter and then all along the back wall. You'd be able to put a larger table in the center, but pushed back towards the window and towards the bench. You could do like an oval table if you want more fluidity, to move around in and out of the banquette seating. You could do a rectangle table as well. I think both are fine because you have that 12-foot wide. You could put a center pendant light or chandelier or whatever you want over the dining room table, which you could see from the adjoining room. And if you don't have hard wiring, that's fine. You could also just swag it over from a plug. And then when the banquette turns the corners and comes up the side walls, you could build out 2 matching storage units on each side. They could be pretty, they could be decorative, they could be coffee bar, they could have glass up top. You could do so much and have them match on each side, so you would have double the storage. And then on the opposite wall of where you have 2 windows in there, well, the other wall will be blank. You could put a beautiful piece of art storage. Now, I know this gives you a lot more seating, but it was just so pretty in my head, I had to sketch it out for you and do it. I like your idea too about just doing like a banquette breakfast nook on one side and then having storage on the right, but it doesn't offer any balance, but it is practical. So it really just comes down to what flavor you like. Like which one would you rather go with? Does the balance and the symmetry matter to you? Would it offer you enough storage? Or would you rather an entire wall of storage kind of thing with the sloped roof? Completely up to you. But I just wanted to give you that idea because it kind of like came to my head. If it's more like me, you could do like, a really beautiful fabric for your banquette seating. Dark wood. Well, if you leave the dark wood on the walls, you could do like a lighter wood for the cabinets or even painted. Here's like an inspiration picture that I found where you can kind of see where the banquette seating goes and dies into a storage cabinet. I think it could be so cool. Definitely I'd put a rug in there, warm up the space as much as you can, but there's so much you could do with it. I got really excited about your space. And then for your flooring issue, with the addition of your banquette seating, having like storage underneath it, like you could lift it and use it as storage as well. See if you could get away with just like not messing with the floor around the perimeter where you have those like mess ups. You may be able to just get away with it and just like have it be like there, and sealed up and never touch it. So you can kind of like play that by ear with how bad the warping is and stuff like that. but obviously update the flooring because I think it would be really beautiful. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I keep leaning over because baby boy is getting so heavy. And I hope this inspires you to get started on your next project. Let me know if something like having a project planner would be super helpful. I'm kind of in the mode of like making one. I kind of think I want to. If it even helps you with one project, I feel like I would have done my duty. And I hope this gave you just the confidence to get over that failure to launch. You know what I mean? Like just past the whole, I just don't even know what to do. I'm just going to close the store and revisit it later, and inspired you to dive back into the project. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, please check out the forum so you can send in your submissions on topic ideas, design dilemmas, your own design dilemmas. I pick from them for every episode. I can help in any way that I can, and I will see you guys again for more updates on YouTube of our kitchen renovation. Come over there, check out the videos, follow along on my own project, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks for another podcast episode. Bye, guys.